The Committee on Ways and Means will now come to order. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairman McGurl,
Here?
Vice Chair Lovasco, Representatives Bland Manlove, Coleman, Eggleston, Mayhew, Pfeiffer, Riggs, Roden, Weber.
We have a quorum, so we will now go into executive session, and we will exec out House Bill 1981. The Committee on notes here. I have a substitute which has been distributed, and I move for its adoption. Any questions? Representative Eggleston.
I don't think I've seen the substitute. Do you have a copy of that handy?
It's the same one as from last week. We had,
Ah,
it
okay.
was distributed, yeah.
Okay, that explains it. Well, I was in it.
No, it's. Do I have any discussion? Inquire.
Mr. Chair, can you give us a brief on what changed in the bill?
Just 1 second here. What did change? Oh, all right. When we heard the bill, the sponsor had presented it as a deduction. Well, with a deduction, in order to get a deduction on your Missouri income tax return, you have to itemize. And that's a larger hurdle to have to jump now. So what this does, it will bring it to a subtraction, kind of like some of your other subtractions that you have on your Missouri return, like unemployment benefits or railroad benefits or interest earned from Missouri sources. So all this does is brings it to an actual subtraction and not a deduction.
Did that change the fiscal note?
No, what they did was, the fiscal note on it, they had assumed, DOR did, that it was a subtraction and not a deduction. Representative Weber. Proceed.
Just a quick question. Was this amendment offered last year, too, on the bill? Was it offered last year? Or is this the first time it's been offered?
I don't know about last year, if it was or not, but it was going to be offered in committee when I exected it out.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? It was distributed last week. It was Representative. All those in favor of adopting the substitute signify by saying aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You have adopted the substitute. I move that House Committee substitute for House Bill 1981 be voted do pass. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Chairman McGurl,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lovasco, Representatives Bland Manlove, Coleman, Eggleston, Mayhew, Pfeiffer, Riggs, Roden, Weber.
By your vote of 9-0, you have voted House Bill 1981 do pass. The next bill that we will exec will be House Bill 1980. 1480, I'm sorry. I move that House Bill 1480 be voted do pass. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Chairman McGurl,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lavasco, Representatives Bland Manlove, Coleman, Eggleston, Mayhew, Pfeiffer, Riggs, Roden, Weber.
By your vote of 9-0, you have voted House Bill 1480 do pass. Our next bill will be House Bill 2200. And I move that House Bill 2200 be voted do pass. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Chairman McGurl,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lavasco, Representatives Bland Manlove, Coleman, Eggleston, Mayhew, Pfeiffer, Riggs, Roden, Weber, Mayhew.
By your vote of 9-0, you have voted House Bill 2200 do pass. The next bill is House Bill 2208. I move that House Bill 2208 be voted do pass. Any discussion? Representative Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment that has been distributed, and I'd like to add it to this bill.
Proceed.
Thank you. This amendment is amendment number ends in .01H. It has been distributed. It's a simple amendment that will allow utilities to track their true amounts of paid property taxes. Currently, once the rates are set, the amount of property tax collected by the utilities is stagnate, and whatever amount was approved during the last rate case. It does not consider any raises or lowering of property taxes from the multitude of jurisdictions where the utility provides service. The amount typically increases almost immediately from the date rates are set, because the book value of the company usually increases with the rate case. If tax rates increase in between the rate cases, the company must slow its investments in infrastructure to pay tax bills that they can't afford or control. I apologize. This tracked amount can then be considered during the next full rate review when all the utility books are open to the PCS, PSC, that's my dyslexic, by the way, and other intervening parties. The legislation would not allow rates to change between rate cases like some other states, such as Kansas, who allow their utilities to raise the rates during that time. We are simply asking to track them.
Do I have a discussion? Representative Riggs.
Jim Clark.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No fiscal note on this?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
No fiscal note. It should be zero fiscal note.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Pfeiffer.
I don't think I understood what you said. So would you be willing to explain it to a layperson like me?
So you want a lay person?
I mean, yes, yeah.
I'm just kidding.
In this context, yes.
Yeah, no, that's good. You're talking to another layperson. So basically, all this is asking to do is for them to be able to track what the rates are during the period that the rates are set, so that at the end of the period, they can come back and review those rates so that they can go to the PSC and ask them to help them with the rates that they lost during that set period of time.
Okay, you need to go back a step.
Okay.
What rates?
The-
Some property tax.
The property taxes at the beginning of the rate case
Okay.
that come in set the rate
Yeah.
till the next case comes up, right? So during that period between the rate cases, as property tax, our property values change, they don't get the opportunity for those increased values. So what they're asking for is to be able to track those values so that at the end of the time, they can come back to PSC and ask for those lost increases of revenue.
Okay, 2 questions about that. How come they can't track that now?
That's just how the statute reads. They can't, so they're just asking for the statute to change, so to give them that ability to make that change,
Okay.
or to track those rates.
So according to law, you can't ask your accounting department to track those rates?
You're gonna
That-
come over my head a little bit on that question. I don't know how and why that would happen. I just know it can't right now. And so that's what they're asking to change with this
I
amendment.
think there's a difference between saying you can't legally, like, take advantage of the rate change, but to track something, anyway.
Yeah, no, I understand what your question is,
yeah.
and I wish I had a better answer for
Okay.
you, but I don't.
Second question is,
Yes.
it seems to have to do with profitability of the company. Do we know if these utilities are less profitable as a result?
Yeah, well, it's going to, the issue is being able to do some of the projects that they want to do. So yes, it would be involved with some of the profitability because they don't have the funding to do some of the projects that they want to do.
Do we have any evidence of that? I mean,
So again, my apologies.
This is a black box to me.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and I wish I could answer that better. I'm not as prepared as I should be on this issue, but I'd be more than happy to get you that information.
Thank you. Just to speak on this proposal, this is very intricate. I feel very uncomfortable in having to vote on it, just looking at it now. It seems that we need more information. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Eggleston,
To comment, if I could?
proceed.
Yeah, thank you. My understanding is the utilities can't just raise rates willy-nilly. They have to go through the PSC, get permission. They have to have justification for each one. Our labor costs went up, our materials costs went up, whatever. And according to his amendment and what I've learned, my understanding is my property taxes went up has not yet been legally made a justification for potentially having a rate increase later on, even though they're paying higher property taxes as it goes on. So his language would make that one of the things that could be asked for. That's my reading of that. Now, I could be wrong. Again, we're all sort of lay people doing the best we can, but that's my understanding of it, so.
And in addition, the tax commission, they assess the utilities and set that valuation. Then, of course, whatever the rate that the municipality or county has then is applied against that assessed valuation. So that's just another portion of this that's involved with this rate. Do I have any further inquiries? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting House Committee Amendment 1 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You have adopted the amendment, House 1. I move that we roll the amendment into the new substitute and adopt the substitute. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. The ayes have it. You have adopted the substitute. Now I move that the House Committee substitute for House Bill 2208 be voted do pass. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Chairman McGurl,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lavasco. Representatives Bland Manlove. Coleman. Eggleston. Mayhew. Pfeiffer. Riggs. Roden. Weber.
By your vote of 9-0, you have voted do pass House Bill 2208. The next order of business, there's no amendments on this one. Yeah. I move that the HJR 125 be voted do pass. Any discussion? It's on the tax rate, income tax rate. With no discussion, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairman McGurl.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lavasco. Representatives Bland Manlove. Coleman. Eggleston. Mayhew. Pfeiffer. Riggs. Roden. Weber.
By your vote of 6-3, you have voted do pass House Bill 2208. We will now go back into public hearing, and we will hear. Wait, pause, I'm sorry. 125. Yes, did I say that or? Oh, yes, thank you for that correction. We will now hear, I had HJR on my mind. Now, HJR 121 by Representative Perkins. Representative, when you are ready, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chad Perkins, State Representative of the 40th District, Lincoln Pike, Rawls, and Monroe County. This HJR is, everybody says they have something that's simple. This one really is, right? It should be very bipartisan. It's just something I think that makes things a little easier for Missourians. It allows them to make their personal property tax payments in installments. Part of it being by December 31st, and the other part of it would be the following calendar year by the end of July. So, except the personal, I'll just read something to you that's kind of important in it, right? Except that the personal property tax may be paid in 2 equal installments, with half of the amount paid by December 31st of the calendar year in which the property is assessed, and the remainder paid by July 31st of the year after such property is assessed. And the reason for this, as everybody knows, is that December can be a fairly expensive month for people anyway, between heating bills and Christmas and things of that nature. December is a fairly expensive month for people, so it's just a way to try to lessen that burden that they have to pay in December. And with that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Representative, okay, it's going to take me just a minute here because I've got several things here. Are you aware that in section 139.52 that there is a mechanism in there presently for installment collections of real estate taxes?
That is correct, yes, but each county doesn't operate that way.
Well, no, they have a choice, and some counties, they don't utilize that.
Right.
And then, because here's the problem with it, with my view, is if any time you delay into the next year, particularly one under section 301.25, you have to show a personal property tax receipt to get licensed.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So consequently, that's going to cause I think that's going to cause a conflict because individuals are not going to be able to produce a paid tax receipt until they have paid the full amount.
Well, I suppose that's right, Mr. Chairman, but at the same time, if you had to have your license plates, you'd go pay your taxes and then get your license plates. Right?
Well, I served as a collector of revenue for several years, so I'm pretty familiar with it. But here's another item that the committee needs to take into consideration. I collected installment payments on real estate taxes, but you had to pay them up front whenever, just like for 22, your bill was divided. You made 10 payments from January to October, or September, and then when the bills came out in October, it had the balance on it, and you would pay the difference. It would all happen in the same year, and it also spread it out. And, I think, with this being, to me, it looks to me like this is a statutory item that we need to do, and then again, one thing that you run into with installment collections, and that's why whenever I did installments, if you wanted to participate, I had to take a bank draw out of your account. We set a date, whether it was the 1st, the 10th, or the 15th, whatever. I would take the money out. That way, I knew it was collected, because consequently, what I had heard from other collectors that tried to do it in office, they would run into people would make a couple of payments, then they wouldn't make one. Well, under the statute, if you don't, you can return that money to the individual. And I think this is a problem that you would run into. Somebody would make one payment, and then you may have and they get their license, you're going to have a difficult time to get the other payment, particularly if they move out of the county, or, there's some other circumstances that they do, and I've seen several. So I just think that these issues need to be resolved.
I like the way you did it, and I think we ought to make the way you did it the law across the state of Missouri, and then we won't need the need for this, right? But there are some collectors that say, no, we're not taking anything until December. And December is a very expensive month for people. So if everyone were as amenable as you were when you were county collector, then there wouldn't be a need for this. And so I would be glad to take any advice you have in sculpting this a certain way. I'd be glad to.
Okay. Representative Pfeiffer?
Hi, I've got several questions. Number one, this discussion already indicates the importance of this. Have you contacted county departments of revenue and talked to, I don't know if there's an association of county revenue
I'm certain there is.
directors?
No, I haven't spoken to them.
Okay.
My gut says that they don't like it.
Okay.
My gut says that they don't like it. But I still think the way that the chairman did it when he was the collector in his county is the more fair way for people, because I do think December is very expensive for people.
And I am absolutely not necessarily against having a payment plan, sure. But why did you decide to do it the year after instead of during the calendar year?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I don't know. I actually prefer this way better, to be honest with you. So I would be glad to make those changes.
Yeah, because one of the things that I immediately started thinking about is my mother died last year. And as you know, when you, I'm a middle child, I got to be the executor, the personal representative of the estate. And boy, tax issues outlive a person who dies. So I can just see this creating more of a headache for literally thousands of people who end up being personal representatives of the people that they love. If you're still trying to chase after all the things that the decedent owes. So that's something to keep in mind also. I think having a payment in the calendar year after just makes it more complicated.
I agree with you. Absolutely, I agree with you. I very much like the way that he did it in Washington County. Washington County?
Yes.
I very much like that. In fact, I wish that's what this said. I'm not going to lie to you. So if we could do that, make this some substitutions, I'd be glad to do that.
Yeah, because, as Representative Pfeiffer had just said, when you cross years and there's a death, then you have an estate you have to deal with.
Yeah.
And consequently, that can get rather messy, particular if there's a lot, there's a lot of challenges in the settlement. So
I get that. I think we all understand, though, the need to make these payments just a little easier for people at that very hard time of the year, and I would be glad to make some changes to it.
yes, I really think it needs to be in the same year. But Representative Weber, proceed.
So very simple question, Representative. Where did you come with the idea for this bill? Did a lobbyist come to you? Did
No.
a constituent?
It's
Did you just?
constituent, a
Okay.
constituent talking about how difficult, December is for them. So-
Uh-huh. All right, thank you.
Representative Mayhew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I won't dwell on too much of what was already said. You're willing to change the bill to be in the current year, not
Absolutely.
in the foregoing year. So, and I guess the thing I'm a little bit confused about is, they have that as an option to save up for their property tax ahead of time. So this boils down to a withholding tax. I mean, some people actually think that's a savings account, right, of some kind or another. Me, on the other hand, I take my maximum deduction. If I have to write them a little tiny check at the end of the year, it doesn't really bother me. I mean, people hate writing that check, but they're honestly doing it anyway, plus they're not getting it. Under the original scenario, I could see a situation where, a fiscal year problem. My county ends their fiscal year on December 31st, but I don't know about other counties, whether or not they do that. But then you would perhaps have one that ended their fiscal year in June, which means that puts that money on next year's budget, kind of like what happens here with us at the state level. So those were the two issues with the original bill. I appreciate folks have a procrastination problem. I, in fact, have that same proclivity myself occasionally, but
I'm going to do that tomorrow.
exactly, yes. And so I'm just having a hard time figuring out if we need a statute to tell people to do that. Once again, the collector, I guess in some counties, he or she might say, no, wait till this, I don't want to have to do the bookkeeping on this. So maybe there is a little bit of a benefit in it in that regard. But I can see the collector charging extra for that privilege. And I don't have the full text of your bill in front of me. I don't know why it's not in my book, but was there an allowance for the collector to charge extra for that privilege?
I don't believe so, no.
Would you be against that?
No, I wouldn't be against that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, yeah, I don't believe that that would be the only allowance that collectors that collect taxes is a convenience fee that they can add on because you can't reduce the tax amount going to the political subdivisions. So I don't believe you could do that. Would be constitutional. I mean, somebody could correct me on that. But the other question that I brought up earlier is licensing. How would you facilitate the licensing of vehicles? Because it's not addressed in here.
I think we could address that if we were to amend this to have them pay that in advance as opposed to in arrears.
yes.
I think that would be the
Yes,
simple fix.
that would
yeah.
solve the problem.
I think it'd be a simple fix.
That would solve that licensing. Representative Pfeiffer?
Yes, okay.
And by the way, paying in advance would solve the problem of when someone were to die as well. So
Right, right. So if I understand your logic for bringing this as a constitutional amendment correctly, reading here, it says, all taxes shall be levied and collected by general laws and shall be payable during the fiscal or calendar year in which the property is assessed. And now you're saying except for. But if we take out the language about the next year, this could be done statutorially.
yeah, I think that's probably accurate. Yeah,
And would you prefer that?
absolutely, I would.
Okay, because frankly, I'm in favor of this, but
We're just trying to make it better.
right,
Exactly.
but that whole issue about doing things statutorily versus constitutional amendments, I think is a really valid discussion. And I like the idea of this being a statute. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions or inquiries? Thank you, Representative. Do I have any witnesses that are here to testify in favor of HJR 121? Seeing none, do I have anyone here in opposition to HJR 121? Seeing none, do I have anyone here for informational purposes only for HJR 121? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing on HJR 121. And with no further business, we are adjourned.